welcome to episode 3 of No Fear, No Favour. I'm your host, Mike Gibbons. What's happening in the US has captured the world's attention. So today, we're looking at Trump's first 5 weeks back in office. And there's no doubt he's been a busy man, that is when he's not back on the golf course. Not many men defy history by taking on the modern world as we know it and attempting to destroy it. So, to help unpack the reign of Trump so far, I'm once again joined by the ever-insightful Adam Jacoby. And together, as always, we will deliver our observations to you with no fear and no favour. Welcome everybody, and a big welcome, Adam Jacoby. How are you, mate?
Very well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Let's not waste any time and get into it. We've got 5 weeks of the Trump presidency to review. So much to talk about, but I think we're going to focus a lot on foreign relations issues and Trump. His international approach in relation to Panama, Canada, and Greenland. Love to know your feelings about what you've heard from Trump in the last 5 weeks.
Where do you even begin, right? It's just like swimming in pig shit the whole time. Every day is just another insane story that you can't quite comprehend. When you say foreign policy, I would say lack of foreign policy, because whatever it is, it's Putin's policy right now at this point. If we look at, I mean, for me, the most telling thing is the Canadian piece, right? I mean, independent of I think Panama is a distraction. It's what Putin wants. I don't think it hasn't gained traction. He hasn't talked about it since. I think the Mexican-Canadian issue is really interesting, because that's not necessarily a Putin thing. That's just idiocy. So that is just him not knowing how to engage, him not understanding what tariffs are, him seeing everybody as persecuting the US in every possible way. His positions are incoherent. Most of them are ignorant. He does not have the best intentions for the American people, because if he did, as he states that he does, he wouldn't advance half of the policies that he's advancing. I think the fact that the Canadians in particular, one of my, most enjoyable moments of the last week is seeing the Canadians fight back and put tariffs on Teslas, put tariffs on US electricity, 25% tariffs as of today. That's going to hurt a lot of people in red states. That's going to hurt Trump's position with Republican Party members in a significant way, and particularly members of his GOP cabinet and others who are going to really hurt. But I think the other thing is that the threat that Canada is basically saying, we'll just turn the electricity off. Yeah. We just won't have any electricity in half of your country. I think that's the way the world needs to engage with Trump now on foreign policy. Yeah. Is he pushes to idiocy and everybody just goes, fine, you want to take off the gloves, let's take off the gloves. Yeah. And I think he's being treated the way he deserves to be treated.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Only way to deal with a bully, I think, is head on. Couple of things. Last time Trump put tariffs on, especially China, because he's up the tariffs on China as well. Certain farmers agriculturally, sorghum and soybeans, I think, got absolutely smashed at the time. Yep. So his base will not be happy with that.
I think he's already lost the agricultural base at this point. They're already up in arms about the whole thing.
Yeah, and he paid them off last time with money that he said, and we'll talk about this in a second, but money he said he collected from tariffs, which was magical.
Can you explain how you came to this belief that foreign governments are paying tariffs?
The tariffs are necessary because we've been treated very unfairly by many, many countries, including our friends, friend and foe. I put massive tariffs on China during my 4 years. We had the best economy in the history of our country, probably the best economy, maybe the best economy in the history of the world. And I used tariffs to even things up. And in particular with China, we took in hundreds of billions of dollars and we had no inflation. And it's a myth. It's a myth that's put out there by foreign countries that really don't like paying tariffs. We're going to bring so many things back to our country, including pharmaceuticals and drugs. And the thing that's going to get us there is tariffs. And I say often it's my favorite word in the dictionary, but I always preface that by saying now, because I got into a lot of trouble with the fake news where they say that's not good. So I say God, love, family, wife, they're all my favorite words, but tariff is about number 4 or 5 on the list.
Stop it. Get some help.
The interesting thing about Canada and Mexico is, as we know, Trump is always a guy that blames previous deals for what got America into trouble, and he's the great saviour. So when he was in his first term, if you remember, they had NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Trump said that was shit and it's time to overturn it. So he introduced the USMCA, which is actually not terribly different to NAFTA. So now he's saying that whole deal is just shithouse. And it's like, but mate, you're the one who put it together in the first place.
Yeah. And look, and I think a lot of it is driven from this. He's like a hyper-extended version of American exceptionalism, right? So Americans already believe they're the best in the world and the best democracy and it's the greatest country and et cetera, et cetera. He takes it to another point where it moves into persecution. If it's not completely oppressing whoever the other part of the negotiating deal is, then he's not satisfied.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. He's built his whole lie on the back of him being a master negotiator.
Yeah.
The truth is, he's a horrendous negotiator.
Yeah.
And because he's so transparently stupid, and his desires are so transparent, that you know what he's trying to achieve. He just tries to do it through extortion. That's not negotiation. That's extortion. And so, we're seeing that now with Ukraine probably more than anything. The turning off of aid to Ukraine today, it's costing Ukrainians lives, and that blood is on Trump's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think you made a very good point. Any MAGA listeners there, I don't know if there's a lot of you out there, but Jesus, guys, it's about time you understood one thing. He's not a master negotiator. He's a shit businessman, and good negotiators don't go bankrupt 6 times. Now, I don't know how dumb you are out there. Just Google it. Google idiocy, Google stupidity, Google bankruptcy. Trump is all of that. And you need to start realising all this bullshit. We've been through it before about being a master negotiator.
I think the biggest thing about the last few weeks, and in particular that Zelensky Oval Office debacle, that is different to Trump 1, is the enablers. And so I think if Trump had done what he did this week in the Oval in his first term, I think the GOP actually, there would have been some backlash.
Yeah.
But there's no backlash anymore because he surrounded himself with loyalists, and he's at the point, what he's figured out is that if anybody in the GOP stands up, they get primaried, and he'll basically say, we'll get rid of you and we'll put up another Trump candidate in your seat. Nobody wants to lose their job and or stand up against him and get death threats from the MAGA cult. And so what he now has is a group of people who literally, before that meeting started, if you had asked all of those GOP members, what's our stance on Russia? Russia's the enemy. They've been our foe for a long time. We support Ukraine. We support Zelensky. We'll continue giving aid. As soon as that meeting finished, Zelensky's got to resign. We're building a bridge with Russia. This is the right thing to do. They just will toe any line that he wants. There's no pushback anymore.
And I'll tell you 2 things that I noticed today. I watched the State of the Union, is the level of sycophancy now to their king, because that's what he is remarkable. Like the standing up and applauding on even the most pathetic things. But the one thing I thought I'd never hear from Congress was twice the GOP crowd broke into a chant of USA, USA. I read an article that said if you look at Trump supporters and the whole Trump thing, it's very much like the World Wrestling Federation in the old days and even 100%. Now. Yeah. On some level, they know it's fake, but they come along with it anyway. And that's what the GOP are doing. And it's actually, to be fair, it's absolutely embarrassing for America.
It's an idiocracy. The country is an idiocracy at this point.
Idiocracy
it is fucking morons. It is morons running a country for morons.
Yeah.
Anybody who has a brain and is fighting back, and there are plenty of people who are doing it.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people going, this is not normal. For me, my favourite thing was seeing the member of Congress standing there with a sign when he walked in that just said, this is not normal. And I was like, that is it, right? That is exactly right. What is going on is not normal behaviour.
No.
But the people who are fighting back, and this is the bit that, we've all got to be careful about how we talk, and we've got to be careful about further polarization, although I'm not entirely sure that's possible, an escalation of rhetoric. But the reality is, and I keep saying this on socials and other places, I'm not sure that the Democrats really understand that you can't legislate and litigate your way out of this. They've reached a point now where they have a self-proclaimed king. They've got control of both houses who are sycophants. They control the court system. They control the FBI. They control the military. They control the CIA. They control national security. There is no legislating and litigating your way out of it. And they control the media. So there's this point now where you start to go, you need to get more creative about the way you solve this problem.
Yeah, but let's talk about that quickly. So what's left? There's 90 cases going on at the moment over in America, and I think they should litigate the shit out of everything.
I agree.
You know what? And you lose, you appeal, and then you appeal again. And you know what happens quickly, Adam? And you and I will be older, still very good looking, but older at the time. In 2 years' time, we have the midterms. And in the midterms, I think the GOP will get absolutely annihilated. And I think the reason why Kamala didn't get in is because 10 million people didn't turn up. They'll be turning up this time.
So this is where you and I diverge a little bit. So this is maybe the nihilistic part of me at this point, and I wasn't like this until 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and seeing the sycophancy and seeing, Trump too is really employing Bannon's flood the zone with shit rhetoric. They're doing it. Every day there's another thing. And my fear at the moment is that there won't be midterms. And they won't be midterms because the polls are going to tell him that he's going to get annihilated.
Yeah.
And they will find a way to do two things. The first thing that they're going to do is change the 2-term limit. And the second thing they're going to do is end the elections. And at that point, the American people have no choice. And I'm praying that they find a way to find some action before they get to that point. If it gets to the abolition of elections, there is nothing but a revolution left.
Yeah. Everybody's talking about almost appeasing Putin, giving up. All this bullshit about Trump wants peace. He doesn't want peace. He wants rare earths.
By our being in Ukraine and doing the exploration and also the digging and taking the rare earth, which we need in our country very badly, we'll be doing a substantial amount of work, probably about at least what we have in there, and we hope to be able to do that. You never know when it comes to that. You dig and maybe things aren't there like you think they're there, but...
Stop it. Get some help.
And he's a bloody asset of Putin. That's what he wants. He wants to look after Putin's interests.
Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit
No, you're
that
the
the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race.
If I had my way, I would unfreeze the Russian assets, and there's $230 billion worth. I would arm Ukraine to the teeth. I'd get out 1 million fucking drones, and I would hit every major city in Russia, especially the Kremlin. It's time to fight fire with fire, I reckon.
Look, it's a really interesting one. Watching Europe come together this week has been one of the most extraordinary things I've seen in my time of watching politics, geopolitics. I think there is a new resolve in Europe that is unlike anything we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And I think it is because for the first time since America became America in a meaningful way on the world stage, nobody can rely on them. And everybody now knows that they can't rely on them. And so what that means is, to your point, the creative options that become available are different, because if you can no longer count on the big bad America coming in and going, hey, we're not going to allow this to happen, then you do, to some degree, need to be more preemptive about your own security. And some of that is the way that they're spending money. And to your point about using Russian assets, that's what the UK is doing. That's what Canada's doing. They're taking, I think Canada was 2 billion, or the UK it was about 3.5 billion of Russian-held confiscated assets that they are giving to Ukraine. The problem still remains, though, and this is where it becomes interesting. So the Americans obviously have military equipment, but the truth is, tons of the biggest military industries come out of Europe. Tons of the biggest military companies are European companies. And so the ability to arm Ukraine with European-related military equipment is there. It's almost an instantaneous thing. The question, though, is how many do you need and how long, what's the lead time on creating? And that's where the Americans added value, because they have stockpiles. And so they have lots of extra stuff.
This is what gets a little bit annoying about this whole thing is you got Trump bullshitting, first of all, that it was 350 billion. I think the maximum the US basically contributed was 170 for a start. And also, I think my understanding is the US contributed about 40% of the total spend, and Europe 60%. Whereas Trump's going, we put in
We do everything.
and they put in 100. So it doesn't help that he's so full of shit.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. And we've put in 3 times more money. We're in for 300 billion, they're in for 100. Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear. We have 230 billion frozen assets in Europe, Russian assets, but this is not as a collateral of a loan, because this is not our belonging. So they are frozen. If at the end of the day, in the negotiation we will have with Russia, they're ready to give it to us, super. It will be loan at the end of the day, and Russia would have paid for that.
If you believe that, it's okay with me.
But I think a lot of the stuff that America did too, that a lot of the spending was within America. And a lot of the arms I think they had were not, obsolete's not the right word, but they were there waiting to be...
It was surplus. Yeah.
Surplus to needs, yeah. So, you know, I think if anybody watches this show, they've just got to realise to sift through the American and through the Trump bullshit about what this is all about. But it's an interesting question about the New World Order, isn't it? Because if nobody can trust America anymore, and that's the way they're heading, because why would you? He might not be a Putin asset, but every decision he's making is exactly what a Putin asset is.
He's 100% a Putin asset. There's not even a question about it anymore.
Yeah.
It's true that Donald Trump has found a lightning-fast way to end the war in Ukraine. Surrender. Ukraine has actually held back Russian forces for 3 years now, and despite fighting a much more powerful adversary, even taken some Russian land. And yet, the Trump administration has preemptively conceded most key Russian demands before the formal negotiations have even begun. No return of all the Ukrainian territory acquired by force. No NATO membership for Ukraine. No American troops on Ukrainian soil. And Trump trashed Zelensky, calling him a dictator and saying he better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. It is no wonder that senior Russian officials like former President Dmitry Medvedev seem almost giddy with joy.
It's incredible.
You know, that's not something... 3 or 4 years ago, you wouldn't have said that. And thought you could say it and be a credible person in the world. Now, there's no way you can not say it. It is so clear that every single geopolitical decision he makes is completely in line with what the Kremlin wants.
Yeah.
There is, you know, and he's abandoning allies and berating them in public. Yeah. I've never seen anything like what happened this week. And I've watched it 2 or 3 times, and it makes my blood boil every time I do. Yeah. Because... you know, I think Trudeau said it really well. It was either this morning or yesterday, when he posted a piece and gave a quote and basically said, we're at a point now where America treats its allies worse than anyone else treats their enemies. Yeah. And that's where we're at. You know, if that's the case and you cannot rely on America anymore and the talking points are Kremlin talking points, then all fucking bets are off. And we need to start talking about a completely different way to solve this problem. And the other part of it is, and this is the bit that I haven't heard a lot of commentary on, but I am really starting to wonder about our friends in China, right? And so the New World Order, as it may unfold over the next little while, leaves a massive gaping hole in the superpower area, because America is now an insular puppet. Russia is not equipped either financially or geopolitically to be a superpower, because nobody wants to have anything to do with Putin. But actually China, who plays the long game better than anyone, has the opportunity to sit back and go, actually, in terms of trade and in terms of influence, being aligned to Europe and right across Asia is a more powerful proposition than just having relations with the US or Russia. It might be in our best interest to fill the superpower gap and now be the centre and voice of reason in an environment where the other two seem to be aligned and be off to the side. So, I think there's still some bits to play out here, and we haven't quite seen how the New World Order is going to unravel.
That's right. That's really mine too, with the USAID thing being cut apart and the stupidity of MAGA and Trump is they don't realise that one of the greatest assets they created around the world is health, is goodwill for the US. So if something does happen in the future, those countries will think well of the US and say, yeah, sure, we'll support you.
Yep.
By actually dragging all of that out, China is now starting to step in and fill those gaps. And they've already started it with soft diplomacy and soft financing in Southeast Asia and the like. So the problem again for America is that Trump... The expression they use about him is he's transactional. What that actually means is he's a fucking idiot. He can't think more than, 1 second ahead. He has no vision at all. There was a comment he made, and I'll tell you what, we've spoken a bit about it. I'm going to play a video now, just some excerpts of when we were talking, when he was talking, Trump and Zelensky and JD Vance got into that little argument. But you'll notice a couple of little things in this video that's really interesting. At one stage, Zelensky is saying, that actually the fighting started in 2014. And then Trump says, 2015. And you think, does he know a bit about it? Yeah. And then Zelensky says 2014 and Trump goes, 2015, I wasn't there. Involved. So he's thinking about himself the whole time, not about what was actually happening. And if I hear one more time that Trump is a man of peace and he cares about somebody else, fuck, I'll just shoot that person. It's just outrageous. But let's have a quick look at this, Adam, and then we'll come back and chat about it.
You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough.
What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and 2014.
2014. Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this.
It's
going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over there.
Sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
Then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I want this. Look, you got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards. What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. I've empowered you to be a tough guy. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
There you go, Adam. Your reaction, please.
Oh, mate, it completely makes my blood boil. The entire thing is enraging and infuriating. For me, aside from the obvious idiocy about the points and them not really understanding the history and anything else, the thing that I found most egregious about that is when J.D. Vance, who has the most punchable face in the world, when J.D. Vance tells Zelensky that he is bringing leaders to Ukraine on propaganda tours, as opposed to taking leaders into a war zone to understand the magnitude of what they're dealing with and what they need to contribute to. And the fact that he's never been to Ukraine, but lectures the president of Ukraine, who's been at war for 3 years, about what's going on in his own country. It is so that 10 minutes should be disqualifying for J.D. Vance to be even able to keep his job. It's just fucking unbelievable.
I agree. And just the other thing that jumped out to me was when Zelensky is under this intense pressure from these two idiots, and then he tries to make a point. And his point was, he says, you will feel this pressure from Russia. Yeah. There's an ocean there, but you will feel that pressure in the future if they're allowed to take over Ukraine. So it was almost a metaphor. He's trying to make a point. Yeah. So idiot Trump then goes, oh, you can't tell us how we feel and how we're going. He missed the point completely, but he kept at it. And the other thing that struck me was all these expressions like, you're not holding any cards. Here's an offer that you can't refuse. And this is one thing about what I saw in that conversation. Trump is nothing better than a dumb mafia boss. That's all he is. He's not a negotiator.
It's all he's ever been, right? But here's the thing about it. And I thought a lot, I like to think about, I start with the geopolitics and then I like to wade back into the psychology, right? For me, who reflected on that exchange for days, where I've landed on that is that if you look at the way he treats Zelensky now, super popular guy, globally, loved all over the world, and engaging in heroic activities on behalf of his country. exactly the same way he dealt with McCain. I like my heroes who don't get caught, don't get captured. I think the psychology of this is that he is particularly uncomfortable around actual heroes who actually sacrifice and actually stand up for something greater than themselves, because that's how Trump wants to be and knows that he's not. And so he went so hard to embarrass him because he actually knew that Zelensky is everything he wants to be, but Captain Bone Spurs has never been it, and that's the problem.
No, and a couple of points on that. Captain Bone Spurs is right. A guy who's a serial rapist, who does the Bone Spurs thing, who spits on veterans as well, especially Gold Star families as well. Nothing more than a coward. He's a very insecure guy. And the second point is, if you remember the first impeachment, that happened because Trump went to Zelensky and said, listen, you give me some dirt on Joe Biden or on blackmailing, and you're not going to get funding from the US. And the thing is, Zelensky stood up and didn't do it. And now that he's popular and probably got double the ratings that Trump has got, I think Trump just fucking hates him. I think there's an envy there as well. So they did their best to tear him down. And I've got to tell you, Zelensky still stood up. How he didn't flatten Trump with that bullshit, I don't know. I mean, you'd be tempted to.
Because there are leaders and there are not leaders, right?
Yeah.
And he's a genuine leader. And he is there on behalf of his people, and he will do what's best for his people at a time of extreme crisis. And this is the thing, for me, him leaving there, an American, Lindsey Graham, fucking an hour later, what a piece of shit human, what a hypocrite, who 4 weeks earlier was literally sat in the room with Zelensky and said, you're the leader I've always dreamed about. And a month later going, I think he needs to leave if we're going to have any relationship here. Put that aside for a moment. But leaving what was a clearly orchestrated ambush in the Oval Office to literally fly to Europe the same day and be met with people who understand the gravity of the challenge to embrace him again was the exact remedy that was required, because there was the opportunity and the risk that he would walk away feeling deflated by the fight in front of him, but to have the rest of the world embrace him and go, no, we've still got allies and we've still got people who are going to back us. In actual fact, I think in one way, Putin will be furious at Trump, because what he actually did was create and coalesce the European resolve much more than had Trump shook his hand and given him the deal. If the deal had happened, Europe would still be sitting back and Putin would still feel as though he had some control over the space, and it's gone completely pear-shaped now.
It is, and that's what happens with morons. You have unintended consequences, and it's galvanised the Europeans behind Ukraine, which is great. Mate, you know what we're going to do? We're going to wrap up, but I want to actually conclude with a quick little chat with you about the short-term future for America that we chatted about before the show, which I thought was fascinating, because as I said to you, my feeling is that litigate the shit out of anything that Trump's doing, keep it in court for 2 years, and then hit those midterms and absolutely destroy the GOP. But interestingly, I think you've got a different take on that.
Look, I'm not sure there will be midterms. So I think the biggest challenge at the moment is that Trump will see the polls coming for the next midterm elections. He will see that most of the country is aghast at his behaviour and the unleashing of Musk onto the Treasury, and he'll know that he's going to lose a lot of seats. And I think at that point they will abolish elections, and at the abolition of elections and the end of the two-term limits, which will have to go hand in hand or it doesn't work, the American people will have run out of choices about how to deal with this situation.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. The other message that's coming through loud and clear is that if Democrats keep playing the nice guys and follow formalities like they have basically through history, their bloody history, if that continues, they've got to fight. They've really got to step up and do things a different way, because sitting back and just watching this unfold and hoping better things will happen is a way to disaster.
Yeah, and look, I agree, and I have some concern that the Democrats don't quite understand the gravity of the situation. And you still talk about them, call your congressman and dial this number. And it's just like, that ship has sailed. It's gone a long time ago. They control the courts, they control both houses, they control the FBI, they control the CIA, they control the military, they control the media. It's a dictatorship now. So you can't treat a dictatorship with litigation and legislation. If you could, there would be no dictatorships. The whole purpose of the design of dictatorship is that those things don't work. And so if they don't work, what else are you going to do?
I just think that if you look at the next 12 months, next 18 months, when the economic figures flow through, when the tariffs are in place, when prices are coming up, hundreds of thousands of people are losing jobs, and all of a sudden America is ostracized from the rest of the world, there comes a point where there's got to be some sort of a reaction, whether it's revolution, some form of rebellious behaviour. The first thing I'd like to see, and I'm going to put my choice, who would you like to see leading the Democratic Party in this fight right now? I've got an idea. What's yours?
I'm
And
not
by the way,
really.
they can't be over the age of 80.
Well, I do love Bernie Sanders, but no, I don't want him to lead the Democratic Party. Look, I think there are a few standout candidates, to be honest. I don't know that I've seen enough from anybody yet to have me believe that any of them are actually capable of leading the country out of what they're in. Some of the names that I like, I like Pritzker.
To grow into that position.
Yeah, I like Pritzker. I love AOC. For me, probably the best at the moment would be Shapiro.
Yeah. I don't know Shapiro well enough, but I do know AOC. I think she's a beauty. I'd love to see her leading without cowardice, actually calling it as it stands and getting stuck in.
That's you need to watch a bit of Shapiro then, because that's absolutely what he's doing. And look, they're both amazing. So is Pritzker. Pritzker's stood up in a way that I didn't really ever imagine he could. And so is Crockett. Crockett is unbelievable. So
you're saying there's enough talent there, much as I hate the word talent, but there's enough good operators there to make a difference?
Look, there are an incredible number of young Democrat leaders emerging. And the other one that you should be aware of is David Hogg, who's now the vice chairman of the. So he was part of the March for Our Lives. He created March for Our Lives. He was one of the two founders.
He was one of the students at one of the schools.
He was correct.
I can't remember which school it was. Yeah. Now he's the one that Marjorie Taylor Greene harassed too. Do you remember that in the streets? I'm pretty sure that was David Hogg.
David, why are you supporting the red flag laws? If Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Parkland, had done his job, then Nicholas Cruz wouldn't have killed anybody in your high school, or at least protected them. Why are you supporting red flag gun laws that attack our Second Amendment rights? And why are you using kids as a barrier? Do you not know how to defend your stance? So I'm walking. He's got nothing to say. Sad. He has nothing to say because there really isn't anything to say, you guys. He has nothing to say because he's paid to do this. And he's a coward. He can't say one word because he can't defend his stance.
He's an amazing. I've met him before. He's an amazing young man.
Yeah, he's impressive. That's good.
He's an incredibly impressive guy. So there is real talent that is coming through. I'll put a little asterisk next to that though, and I'll say, the talent that exists always existed. The issue is whether the party is prepared to give up to the younger brigade. And that is still a huge question mark. And even if it is prepared to either hand over or just acquiesce to the younger generation, the other part of it is that they've always had the intellect and they've always had the capability to step up into a role. The problem is that the role that they have been groomed to step up into may be different to the role that is required. And that's something that has not yet been tested.
And when we talk about roles, unfortunately, the senior roles in the Democratic Party traditionally have been how much money can you raise? And that's one of the biggest problems, because I don't want a politician or a leader out there raising money from bloody corporates and the like, and even small donations. I want them focusing on policy and what they're going to do when they actually get in there and fighting with the opposition.
Yeah, and part of what we're witnessing with Trump is actually quite extraordinary, because it shouldn't be possible. So in fact, it's probably not possible. It'll all fall down. But what you're seeing in the policies are two completely conflicting ideas being prosecuted at the same time. So you're getting, on one hand, this extreme isolationism.
Yep.
America first. Only America. Everything's about America. We don't give a shit about anybody else. But at the same time, as you're having isolationism, you're having expansionism going, we want Greenland and we want Canada. And so normally, what do you want? Do you want to be bigger or do you want to be smaller? You can't do both of those things at the same time. To me, whoever emerges as a Democratic leader is somebody who, in the face of the isolationism, which is starting from Trump, but will end up becoming part of how the rest of the world just engages with the US going forward. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We don't want to trade with you. We don't want to engage with you. We don't want to travel to you. We're done, right? The next Democratic leaders need to be people who can reach out to the rest of the world and win back the confidence. It's what they're going to have to win, the confidence of the American people to fight the fight to win their country back, and they're going to have to win the rest of the world to say, we're not doing that anymore. And so it's a very different skill set and talent that we're going to look for. Yeah. It's almost like a once in a generational thing, which is why I'm saying I haven't quite seen it yet emerge.
Yeah, I do. That's why the next year or so is going to be fascinating. If people actually want the truth and genuine informed opinion, they just need to come back and watch this show and you can learn it all. I tell you what, we're going to wrap up now. Next week, by the way, we're actually going to do a deep dive into Elon Musk, who's the real president of bureaucracy, I guess, in the United States, or even the real president, some people say, to look at what he's actually done. Are there any positives in there? It's hard to see, in my opinion, but it's certainly worth having a look at what Elon's been up to.
Yeah, and that magical share price of losing 32% of value in the space of 6 weeks. He's literally lost $1 trillion worth of company value in 6 weeks.
Yeah, and what a lot of people might not realise is that Musk borrows against his Tesla stock. So if that stock's going south, then suddenly his hopes of being a trillionaire even, he might only be worth 100 or 200 billion. It's terrible, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, he's definitely lost a very significant chunk of his net worth recently. And the other one that was propping him up was Starlink, and we've got a lot of companies, a lot of countries who are now abandoning Starlink as well.
Yeah, which is fantastic. And the backlash against Tesla, that's democracy talking. That's the people talking.
100%. Yeah.
And so, mate, as always, we love to approach the big news and the big topics, and we do it with no fear.
And no favour, mate.
Beautiful, mate. We'll see you next week.